At my husband's funeral, I got a message. I am still alive. The phone vibrated in my black clutch purse during the eulogy. I almost ignored it. Who would be texting me during Thomas's funeral? But something made me look. Maybe it was the way the phone buzzed 3 times in quick succession, urgent and insistent. Maybe it was the fact that I'd been numb for 3 days and any sensation, even annoyance, was better than the endless gray fog. I opened my purse discreetly, hidden behind the funeral program with Thomas's photo on the cover. His smile looked back at me, that confident, warm smile that had won me over 26 years ago. The smile of a man who just closed a major deal. The smile of a man who loved his life, his work, his family. The smile of a man who was supposedly dead. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. The message was simple, just 4 words that made my heart stop. I am still alive. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I looked up at the casket, polished mahogany, covered in white roses, so final and real. Inside was a body, Thomas's body. I'd identified it myself at the morgue 3 days ago, even though it had been difficult. The car accident had been severe, they'd said. The fire afterward had been worse. The detective who'd called me had been gentle but firm. Mrs. Mercer, I need to prepare you. The body is badly burned. We've used dental records for identification, but we need a family member to confirm personal effects. I'd stood in that cold room, staring at the body bag, at the items laid out on the steel table. The wedding ring, white gold with our initials engraved inside. The Rolex watch I'd given him for our 20th anniversary, the crystal cracked but the inscription still visible. Time stands still when I'm with you. His wallet, charred but intact enough to show his driver's license. His briefcase, scorched but recognizable. That's him, I'd whispered, because what else could I say? The evidence was right there. That's my husband. But I'd seen enough. The wedding ring. The watch I'd given him for our 20th anniversary. The dental records had confirmed it. Thomas Mercer was dead. So who had sent this message? I looked around the crowded church. Hundreds of people had come, business associates, friends, neighbors, family. Thomas had been well-loved, successful, the kind of man who left a mark on the world. At the front, our daughter Sarah was crying quietly, her husband's arm around her shoulders. She was 23, pregnant with her first child, a child Thomas would never meet. My phone buzzed again. Don't react, don't let them see. Meet me at the old cabin tonight, come alone, trust no one. The old cabin. My breath caught. No one knew about the old cabin except Thomas and me. It was where we'd spent our honeymoon 26 years ago, a tiny fishing cabin 2 hours north, so isolated we joked about disappearing from the world for a week. We'd gone back every anniversary, just the two of us, no phones, no work, no interruptions. I hadn't told anyone about it. Not Sarah. Not my sister Linda, who was sitting beside me, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Not anyone. Another message. If you love me, if you ever loved me, come tonight. Your life depends on it. So does Sarah's. My heart was pounding so hard I thought people might hear it. The priest was still speaking, his voice a distant drone about eternal rest in God's mercy. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to keep my face composed, to not scream or run or do any of the 100 desperate things clawing at my chest. If this was a cruel joke, it was the cruelest imaginable. If this was some scam, some predator who'd somehow learned about our private place. But that threat, your life depends on it, so does Sarah's. I looked at my daughter again, at her swollen belly, at her grief-stricken face, and I made a decision. I would go to the cabin, tonight. But I wouldn't go unprepared. The reception at our house was torture. People kept telling me how sorry they were, how Thomas was in a better place, how time would heal. I smiled and nodded and accepted their casseroles and condolences while my mind raced. My sister Linda was playing hostess, directing people to the food, accepting flowers, making sure everyone had what they needed. She'd flown in from Seattle the day after Thomas died, taken charge of everything I couldn't handle: the funeral arrangements, the death certificates, the notifications to banks and credit card companies. All the brutal administrative tasks that come with death. "You're holding up so well," someone said to me. Mrs. Patterson from down the street, her eyes red from crying. She'd known Thomas longer than I had. She'd sold us this house 24 years ago. He was such a good man, such a good neighbor. "Thank you," I said automatically. "And your daughter, how is she handling it, with the baby coming?" "She's strong, she'll be okay. If you need anything, anything at all, you just call me. Tom would have wanted us to look after you." Tom, she'd always called him Tom. He'd hated it, but he'd never corrected her because he was kind like that. Was kind, had been kind. The tenses were all wrong now. Everything was wrong. Thomas's business partner, Richard Vance, pulled me aside in the kitchen. He was a tall man, always impeccably dressed, with silver hair and cold blue eyes that had never quite smiled, even when his mouth did. "Catherine, I know this is a difficult time, but we need to discuss the business. Thomas's shares, the partnership agreement." "Richard, my husband was buried 2 hours ago." I know, I'm sorry." He didn't look sorry. He looked impatient, agitated. There was sweat on his upper lip despite the air conditioning. "But there are time-sensitive matters, contracts, clients, decisions that need to be made. Thomas was the face of Mercer and Vance Investments. Without him, you're worried about losing clients." "I'm worried about protecting what Thomas built, what we built together." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. His breath smelled like scotch and mints. "Catherine, I need you to sign some papers. Transfer of authority, temporary management agreements, just until we can sort out the long-term arrangements. I'll need to review everything with my lawyer." His jaw tightened. A muscle twitched near his eye. "Of course, but time is of the essence. We have a major deal closing next week. The Henderson portfolio, $12 million. If the clients get nervous, if they think the company is unstable." "Then you'll have to reassure them, Richard. I'm not signing anything today." He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Anger, frustration, or something else. Something colder, more calculating. "Thomas wouldn't want you to jeopardize everything he worked for. Thomas would want me to be careful, which is exactly what I'm being." His hand shot out and gripped my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. "Catherine, listen to me. The company is vulnerable right now. There are people, competitors, former clients with grudges, who would love to see us fail. I need your cooperation. Thomas would have expected you to trust me." I pulled my wrist away. "Thomas would have expected me to think for myself. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have guests to attend to." After he left, I stood in my kitchen, the kitchen where Thomas had made me coffee every morning for 26 years, and wondered if I was losing my mind. Was grief making me paranoid? Was I seeing threats where there were none? My phone buzzed. Another message. "Vance is not who you think he is. Come tonight, I'll explain everything. Delete these messages, now." My hands trembling, I deleted the conversation. Then I went upstairs to pack. I told Sarah I needed some time alone, that I was going to stay at a hotel for the night, that being in the house without her father was too painful. She understood. She offered to come with me, but I insisted she go home with her husband, rest, take care of the baby. "Mom, are you sure you're okay?" She studied my face with those sharp eyes she'd inherited from Thomas. "You seem, I don't know, different." "I'm your mother at your father's funeral, sweetheart. Nothing about this is okay." She hugged me tight and I held her, breathing in her perfume, memorizing the feel of her in my arms. If those messages were real, if there was real danger, this might be the last time I saw her. "I love you, Sarah, more than anything." "I love you too, Mom." After everyone left, after the house was finally empty and silent, I went to Thomas's study. I hadn't been able to enter it since the police had called about the accident. It still smelled like him, leather and coffee, and that expensive cologne I'd bought him last Christmas. I sat at his desk and opened the locked drawer with the key I kept on my necklace. Inside was the gun Thomas had insisted I learn to shoot years ago when we'd had a break-in scare. A Glock 19, cleaned and maintained. I'd hated it then. Now I was grateful. I checked the magazine, chambered around like he'd taught me, and put it in my purse. Then I drove north. The cabin looked exactly as it always had, small, rustic, nestled in the pine trees beside a dark lake. It was nearly midnight when I arrived, and the only light came from my headlights and the sliver of moon above. I sat in my car for a long time, engine running, hand on the gun in my purse, every nerve screaming at me to turn around and drive away. But I'd come this far. I turned off the car and stepped out into the cold October night. The cabin was dark, but as I approached the door, I saw it was slightly ajar. "Thomas," my voice was barely a whisper. "Inside, quickly." I pushed open the door and stepped into darkness. Before I could reach for a light switch, the door closed behind me and someone grabbed my arm. I spun, pulling the gun from my purse, my heart hammering, and found myself pointing it at my dead husband. Thomas stood in front of me, alive, real, solid. Thinner than I remembered, with a beard he'd never had before, wearing dark clothes I'd never seen. But his eyes, those were his eyes, green with gold flecks, the eyes I'd looked into every day for 26 years. "Catherine, thank God," his voice broke. "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." The gun wavered in my hand. "You're dead. I identified your body. I buried you today." "I know, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but it wasn't me in that casket. It was," he stopped, running a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture. "This is going to sound insane. You're alive and I buried someone else today. I'm past insane. Sit down, please, let me explain." I didn't lower the gun, but I did sit in one of the old chairs by the cold fireplace. Thomas, if this was really Thomas, sat across from me, his hands visible, non-threatening. "3 months ago," he began, "I discovered something at the company, something Richard didn't want me to find. He's been embezzling, Catherine, for years. Millions of dollars funneled through shell companies, fake investments, client accounts that don't exist. That's insane. Richard is your partner, your friend. Richard is a criminal. And when I confronted him, when I told him I was going to the authorities, he told me that if I did, I'd never see my family again. That accidents happen. That people die." The room felt very cold suddenly. "So you faked your death?" "Not at first. At first I tried to be smart about it. I gathered evidence, documented everything, went to the FBI. They told me they needed time to build a case, that I should act normal, not tip him off." Thomas's face was haggard in the dim light. "But 2 weeks ago I got a warning. Someone left a photo on my car windshield. It was Sarah, taken with a telephoto lens outside her apartment. There was a message: 'Back off or we'll send you pieces of her.' I felt sick. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because they were watching. My phone was tapped, our house was bugged, they had people following me. The FBI said the organization Richard's involved with, it's not just embezzlement, Catherine. It's money laundering for a drug cartel. These people don't make threats they don't keep. So you." So I staged my death, with the FBI's help. They found a body, a John Doe from a car accident downstate, similar build, similar age. They arranged the crash, the fire, made it look like me. Even fooled the medical examiner. He leaned forward. "It was the only way to keep you and Sarah safe. If they thought I was dead, they'd have no reason to hurt you. And I could testify against Richard without risking your lives." I stared at him, this man who was my husband and a stranger at the same time. "You let me grieve. You let Sarah stand at your grave and cry for her father. You let us bury a stranger and believe he was you." "I know," his voice cracked. "I know what I did to you, But Catherine, they would have killed you, both of you, and made it look like an accident just like they tried to do to me. Tried to do. The crash was supposed to be real. Richard arranged it, had someone tamper with my brakes. The FBI knew it was coming, so they staged it before his people could do it for real. But he really did try to kill me, and he'll try again if he finds out I'm alive. I tried to process this to make sense of what he was telling me. My mind kept going back to the morgue, to the body I'd identified. The personal effects, your ring, your watch, your wallet. How? The ring was a duplicate. I'd had it made months ago when I knew this might happen. The watch, his voice caught. I'm sorry, Catherine, I had to give them the real one. It was the only way to make the identification convincing. The wallet, the briefcase, all of it was staged. The watch I gave you. You gave it to a corpse. I gave it to save your life, and I'd do it again. He met my eyes. I'd give up everything, every possession, every memory, everything but you and Sarah to keep you safe. The FBI knows you're alive. A handful of agents, that's it. The investigation is ongoing. Richard thinks he got away with it, got away with murdering his partner and stealing millions. He's getting sloppy, making mistakes. The FBI thinks they'll have enough to arrest him within a week. So why tell me now? Why bring me here? Thomas's face darkened. Because I got word from my FBI handler today. Richard is planning to contest the will. He's going to claim that Thomas, that I had debts, that the company is owed money, that he needs to seize assets to cover them. He's going to try to take everything from you and Sarah. And the FBI thinks he might go further than that. Further. You're the only obstacle to him taking complete control of the company. If you were to die, another tragic accident maybe, a grieving widow who couldn't go on, then Sarah would inherit. And Sarah is 23, pregnant, vulnerable, easy to manipulate or eliminate. I finished the sentence feeling cold all over. The FBI wants to move you and Sarah into protective custody. Tonight. They're watching the house now, but they need you to agree to cooperate. You want me to disappear too, to leave my life, my home, everything. Just for a week, maybe two, just until they arrest Richard and everyone involved. Thomas reached out like he wanted to take my hand, then stopped. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know what I've put you through. But please, Catherine, please trust me one more time. Let me protect you. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the wooden floor. I walked to the window, looking out at the dark lake, my arms wrapped around myself. Do you remember our wedding day? I asked quietly. Catherine, do you remember what you said in your vows? You wrote them yourself. You said, I promise to always tell you the truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because a marriage built on anything less than honesty isn't a marriage at all. The silence behind me was heavy. You broke that promise, Thomas. You broke it for 3 months while you planned this. You broke it when you let me identify a stranger's body. You broke it when you let me plan your funeral, pick out your casket, write your obituary. You broke it every single day since then. I did it to save your life. No. I turned to face him. You did it because you didn't trust me. You didn't trust me to handle the truth. You didn't trust me to be strong enough, smart enough, capable enough to face this threat with you. You made a decision for me about my life without giving me any choice. If you'd told me, we could have faced it together. We could have gone to the FBI together. We could have protected Sarah together. Instead, you decided I was too fragile, too weak, too much of a liability. Tears were running down my face now. For 26 years, we've been partners, equal partners. And then you decided you were the only one who got to make the big decisions. Thomas stood up, his own eyes wet. You're right, you're absolutely right. I should have trusted you, I should have told you. But Catherine, they had pictures of Sarah. They threatened to cut her into pieces, and I couldn't think, I couldn't risk it. The thought of losing you, of losing her. His voice broke. I would rather break every promise, tell every lie, become someone you hate, than attend your actual funeral, than have Sarah's actual body in a morgue somewhere. We stared at each other across the cabin, and I saw the man I'd married, older, more tired, bearing the weight of impossible choices. And I saw myself reflected in his eyes, grieving and angry and still, despite everything, in love with him. I looked at this man, my husband, my dead husband, my living husband. I thought about Sarah, about the grandchild I'd never meet if something happened to me. I thought about the gun in my purse and the fact that I'd almost shot him. And I thought about Richard Vance, with his cold eyes and his urgent need for me to sign papers. "I want to talk to the FBI, now." Thomas nodded, pulled out a phone and made a call. Agent Sarah Morrison arrived 20 minutes later with her partner, Agent Chen. They had badges, credentials, and detailed knowledge of everything Thomas had told me. They also had photographs, surveillance shots of Richard meeting with men in expensive suits, financial records showing the embezzlement, recorded phone conversations planning Thomas's accident. "Mrs. Mercer, I know this is overwhelming," Agent Morrison said. Her voice was kind but professional. "But your husband did the right thing. He's helped us build a case against one of the largest money laundering operations in the Northeast. Richard Vance is just one player, but he's a key one, and he's dangerous." "Show her the other thing," Thomas said quietly. Agent Chen pulled out another photograph. It showed Richard standing in what looked like a parking garage, talking to a man I didn't recognize. The man was handing Richard an envelope. "This was taken yesterday," Agent Chen said. "That envelope contains $50,000. We know because we arrested the courier an hour after this photo was taken. When we questioned him, he told us the money was for a job, specifically making a widow's death look like suicide." The room spun. "He's going to kill me." "He's hired someone to kill you, probably within the next few days, while you're still grieving, vulnerable, before you have time to really look at the company's finances or ask difficult questions." Agent Morrison's face was grim. "We're making arrests tomorrow morning, but we need you safe until then, both you and your daughter. Sarah doesn't know about any of this." "No one can know," Thomas said. "Not until it's over. The fewer people who know I'm alive, the safer everyone is." I looked at all of them, the agents with their badges and guns, my husband with his new beard and haunted eyes. I thought about the casket I'd stood beside today, the body I'd buried, the lie I'd been living without knowing it. "What do you need me to do?" The FBI moved quickly. I called Sarah from Agent Morrison's phone, told her I'd changed my mind about the hotel, that I wanted her with me, that I'd pick her up. When we arrived at her apartment, I saw the unmarked FBI cars positioned around the building. Sarah came down in her pajamas, confused and worried. "Mom, what's going on? You sounded strange on the phone." "Get in the car, sweetheart. I'll explain everything." We didn't go to a hotel. We went to a FBI safe house 30 miles away, a nondescript ranch house with agents stationed outside and inside. And there, in a quiet living room with bulletproof windows, I told my daughter that her father was alive. She didn't believe me at first. She got angry, accused me of having a breakdown, demanded to call her husband. But then Thomas walked into the room, and Sarah's face went through every emotion I'd felt: shock, disbelief, hope, recognition, joy, and finally rage. "How could you?" She was crying and yelling at the same time. "How could you do this to us?" "I'm sorry, baby girl, I'm so sorry." Thomas was crying too. "I did it to keep you safe, both of you." "Safe? You let me think you were dead. You let me bury someone and think it was you." Agent Morrison intervened, showing Sarah the same evidence she'd shown me, explaining the danger, the timeline, the necessity of secrecy. Slowly, Sarah's anger gave way to understanding, then fear, then determination. "So what happens now?" "Now," Agent Morrison said, "you both stay here until tomorrow morning. At 6 a.m., we arrest Richard Vance and 17 other individuals connected to the operation. By tomorrow afternoon, you'll be able to go home. Your husband, your father, will stay in protective custody until the trial, but the immediate danger will be over." "And then what?" I asked. "Thomas comes back from the dead. How do we explain that?" "We've worked with witness protection on situations like this before," Agent Chen said. "The official story will be that there was a misidentification of the body, that Thomas was actually suffering from amnesia due to the accident, that he was found wandering and only recently regained his memory. It's not perfect, but it's plausible enough." "People will talk," I said. "Let them talk," Thomas said. "As long as you're safe, as long as Sarah's safe, I don't care what anyone says." Sarah was staring at her father, her hand on her pregnant belly. "You missed it. The ultrasound, finding out the gender, you missed it all." "I know I've missed so much, but I'm here now if you'll let me be." She didn't answer right away, but she didn't leave either. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the safe house living room, watching the street through bulletproof glass, my dead husband asleep on the couch nearby, my pregnant daughter in the bedroom down the hall. At 6:04 a.m., Agent Morrison's phone buzzed. She listened, said a few words, and then smiled at me for the first time since we'd met. "It's done, they got him. They got all of them." Richard Vance was arrested at his home in front of his wife and teenage sons. The FBI found evidence of embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. They found the $50,000 in his safe, along with detailed plans for making my death look like a suicide, pills and alcohol, a note they'd forged in my handwriting. They also found something else, a file on Thomas's accident, including communications with the mechanic who'd tampered with his brakes. Richard had kept records of everything, apparently confident he'd never be caught. By the time Sarah woke up, 17 arrests had been made, millions in assets had been frozen, and the news was breaking that a major money laundering ring had been dismantled. Thomas and I sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee like we'd done 1,000 mornings before, except this time there were FBI agents in the house, and our daughter was sleeping in a safe house bedroom, and the whole world thought he was dead. "What now?" I asked. "Now we testify. Now we help them put these people away. Now we rebuild." He reached across the table and took my hand, the first time we'd touched since I'd pointed a gun at him. "If you'll let me, I know I broke your trust, I know I hurt you, but Catherine, I love you. I've loved you for 26 years. That's never been a lie." I looked at our hands, his familiar fingers intertwined with mine. "You let me bury a stranger. You let me believe you were dead. That's not something I can just forgive and forget." "I know. But you did it to save us. You did it to save Sarah and the baby." I met his eyes. "So I'm going to try to forgive, to understand, to rebuild. But Thomas, if you ever lie to me again—" "I won't, I swear. No more secrets, no more lies. Whatever happens, we face it together." "Together," I repeated and squeezed his hand. The news broke that afternoon. Thomas Mercer, presumed dead in a car accident, had been found alive, suffering from amnesia caused by head trauma. His miraculous recovery of his memory came just in time to assist federal authorities in bringing down a massive criminal enterprise run by his former business partner. The story was on every channel in every paper. Our house was surrounded by reporters, but we weren't there. We stayed at the safe house for 3 more days while the FBI secured the area, while Richard Vance and his associates were arraigned, while the immediate danger passed. When we finally went home, Sarah's husband met us at the door. She'd called him from the safe house, told him everything, and he'd been waiting. He hugged Thomas, his dead father-in-law who wasn't dead, and said simply, "Welcome back, sir." The house was full of wilted flowers from the funeral, casseroles in the refrigerator from well-meaning neighbors, a stack of sympathy cards on the counter, evidence of a death that never happened, a grief that was real but also false. I threw away the flowers, donated the casseroles, put the sympathy cards in a box in the attic. And slowly, carefully, We began to rebuild. Richard Vance's trial lasted 6 weeks. Thomas testified for 3 days, laying out the evidence of embezzlement, showing the jury exactly how his partner had stolen millions while pretending to be his friend. I testified too, describing the day Richard had pressured me to sign papers, the cold calculation in his eyes. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Richard was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. He never looked at us during the sentencing, just stared straight ahead, his face empty, his expensive suit looking out of place in the harsh fluorescent light of the courtroom. As we left the courthouse, Thomas put his arm around me. "It's over." "Is it?" I asked. "Really over?" "The legal part is, the rest, that's up to us." Sarah gave birth to a baby girl 3 months later. We were all in the delivery room, Sarah, her husband, me, and Thomas. When the nurse placed the baby in Sarah's arms, my daughter looked at her father with tears streaming down her face. "I want to name her Catherine Janet, after both grandmothers." I couldn't speak. Thomas couldn't either. We just held each other and cried while our daughter held our granddaughter, and the past and future merged into one perfect moment. I'm writing this 5 years later. Thomas and I are still married, still together, though it hasn't been easy. There were months of therapy, countless conversations about trust and betrayal, and the impossible choices we make to protect the people we love. We sold the investment firm, or what was left of it after the FBI seized Richard's assets. Thomas works as a consultant now, helping companies detect fraud. I went back to school and became a victim's advocate, helping people navigate the aftermath of violent crimes. Sarah's daughter Catherine is 5 now, brilliant and stubborn and perfect. She knows the story, the age-appropriate version, anyway, of how Grandpa went away for a while to help catch bad guys, and she thinks he's a hero. Maybe he is. Maybe we all are in our own ways, just trying to survive, to protect the people we love, to do what's right even when the cost is enormous. The other day, I was cleaning out a closet and found my old funeral outfit, the black dress, the clutch purse. And in the purse, deleted but somehow still saved in an archive folder, were the messages that changed everything. "I am still alive. Trust no one. Come tonight, your life depends on it." I showed them to Thomas. He looked at them for a long time, then at me. "Do you ever regret it, coming to the cabin that night?" I thought about it, about the fear, the betrayal, the grief that was both real and false, about the months of rebuilding trust, the nightmares, the therapy sessions, about the price we'd all paid. "No," I said finally. "You saved our lives, you did what you had to do, and we survived." "We did more than survive," he said, pulling me close. "We won." And standing there in our closet, surrounded by the ordinary evidence of our ordinary life, I realized he was right. We had won. Not because the bad guys went to prison or because we got our happy ending, but because we chose each other again and again, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. That's what love is, I think. Not the easy moments, but the hard ones. Not the beginning or the ending, but everything in between. The choice to keep choosing, to keep trying, to keep believing that tomorrow might be better than today. My husband died 5 years ago, and then he came back to life. And we both had to learn how to live again, how to trust again, how to love again. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Every single day, it was worth it.